Soil brothers and soil sisters. What's going on, fam? It is a beautiful day in Savannah, guys. It's 81 degrees out here today. Man, I mean, if it could stay like this year round, I'll be a happy man. But we are here today to talk about bees. All right. So our objective today is to actually get to people. Yeah, it popped up.
Okay.
Get people who actually have thought about or want to get bees pointed in the right direction. All right. So I know the issue I had is, I put it off because I didn't know exactly what direction to go in first. There's a lot of moving parts to it. So if we do some background checking on how what it requires to keep bees, it's a lot. And what do you do first? How do you actually get started keeping bees? So we had somebody come in our chat, a subscriber, a supporter, who has a channel, and he is keeping bees. And it's one thing to sit there and just look at somebody tell you what they feel like they need you to know. But there's a whole lot more questions if you've never done it before that you actually have. Uh, People that's more advanced than it, the questions don't even occur to them most of the time when they're talking about keeping their bees. But some of us actually need to know from the ground up. All right. So today we got somebody that's going to talk to us about getting bees, keeping bees. What's some of the things you really need to know to get started, and some of the issues that you might have. So today we got Jared with Beehive in the house. We're gonna bring him up. What's going on, brother?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, man. You sound great. Yeah, we was trying to get. Man, I thought it wasn't gonna work for a minute. We was having a little bit of problem getting started, but
Yeah,
how's everything going?
everything's going real well, man. Real well. I
Yeah.
got no complaints here. How about
So,
you
what's your
guys?
weather like out there?
Oh, it's rainy, rainy and
Yeah.
rainy.
So, what's your temperature looking like in the
I think
mountains?
uh I think right now it's sitting around like 57 out here.
Okay. That's the high.
That's a high, yeah.
What's your lows dropping down to?
The lows last night was like 41.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I don't envy that at all, man. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful here. It's like perfect weather to be out doing whatever you want. I should be in my hive, but I'll be so terrified I won't be able to concentrate on you. Better yet, a chat. Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can bring a chat up. Matter of fact, I ain't even looking at it. So J3GS Farms in the house. What's up, fam? Grace and
Hey,
Fire. What's up, Grace and Fire? Broke Farm in the house. What's up, bro? Yeah, I mean, bro, you ever thought about getting bees? Because one of the things we want to do today is any questions that you have, about bees and getting them and keeping them. I want y'all to ask, just in case I forget to ask anything. Okay, so we're gonna start off with Jared. What should you do first? What? Okay, so you don't have no equipment, you don't have no bees, you have limited knowledge on keeping them and what to do with them. What would you say would be the very first thing you need to know or you should do?
well, that's a good question. I think when it comes down to it, I think the very first thing that someone should do that, well, I guess once they get interested in bees, is start doing the research. Your research knowledge is very important. It's always changing. just like the world around us. We're always having to adapt with everything that's going on. So I think once someone has made up their mind that they want to get bees, they immediately from there start their learning journey. Just talk with other beekeepers, start doing research on the internet. There's a lot of good sources out there, and even just pick up some books. There's some really good books out there. I laughed at it at first when it's like those books that are like, whatever topic for dummies and stuff like that. Man, I
Mhm.
tell you what, I picked up one of those that says like Beekeeping for Dummies. Really good book, and they update those a lot. So
Okay. So now you got the basic knowledge of what it takes or what it is to be a beekeeper. Generally, would they tell you where to go to? Well, what would you do next, as far as getting the stuff you need?
well, as far as getting the stuff you need, there's a couple different sources for it. Obviously, we all know that you got online that you can start looking and type it in, beekeeping equipment, and then you can type like live honeybees and stuff, and you can find different sources with that. Or if you know a fellow beekeeper, or like the area that you live in, you can actually even Google and stuff like too. They got a lot of bee clubs around, so you can find a local bee club, and someone can start to point you in the right direction to be able to find some of your, I guess, equipment, and then the next would be like the need for bees and all that.
Okay, so we have a question from Hidden Treasure. How many hives do you suggest starting with?
That's a perfect question. So when I was first getting into it, I made the mistake by just getting one hive with it, because unless know some people or can see other people's hives and stuff like that, I recommend that you get two hives, because one may be doing really really well, and then one may, let's say it starts to have some issues or some problems, but you have I guess a second one to be able to look at and compare the two together. But if you only can start with one, I mean, obviously you still start with one. That's how I started. But if you can, it's possible you can get enough equipment in the bees. I would recommend starting with two.
Okay, so Grace and Fire says she looked at some equipment and it seems to be overwhelming with what to buy. You have any suggestions on, I guess, the basic kit for somebody that's brand new?
Yeah. So it can be overwhelming when you start seeing all that stuff. The main thing that I try to, like we talked last time, try to talk to another beekeeper and find out, because there's a lot of, I guess, fancy equipment that you have out there and stuff like that. But some of the basics, um, it's just like very essential pieces. Like one of the first things, you can build a hive from the bottom up. So I'll name some of the equipment. Like you start with the bottom board, and then you get what's called a brood box or a deep box, and then you'll get what's called a medium or a super, and then you get an inner cover and an outer cover. That's the basics. Of course, when you get your boxes, they come with frames, but that's just the first starter that you'll get with all those. It essentially comes out to, I think it's just 7 pieces of equipment, including the frames.
Okay, so is there any place in the United States where you can't keep bees? As far as the weather concerned.
Um, Honestly, I would say no. I mean, I know, I think it's another channel out there. They actually keep bees out in Alaska.
Really?
Yep. So they keep them out there in Alaska. But as far as I know, there's at least one beekeeper in every state out there.
Okay. I got a personal question. And I think I know just because I saw it, but I'm not 100%. Should you place your bees in shade or just out in the sun? It seemed like the box would get hot, but I don't know.
Yeah. So that's actually a good question with it. So when you're looking at, I guess, for the orientation of where to set your hive, and you want to be able to give it sunlight, but if possible, you can give it a shade. Obviously, the way I look at it is when the hive, to first like get them moving, when say it gets cold outside, you want to have them get that morning sun, where it can immediately, the first sign of the day, they can start getting that sun, and they can have it for, I like to do it for at least half, if not 3/4 of the day. And then as the sun's setting and starts to go down, the bees can start getting some shade and start to cool down a little bit. Because I mean, we know when the summers they get hot. I mean, some
Mhm.
of my hives they'll get maybe an hour or so of shade just in a day, but they can actually do that. They actually do really well as far as regulating their temperature to keep it cool in there.
Mhm. It seems like it'll be, oh, man. Seems like it'll cook them. I mean,
Yes.
because
So
yeah,
one of the things that they do is it's called bearding. So it's kind of you know when it's getting hot in there because you have like the front entrance of your hives and you'll see like this giant bee beard that's just like hanging from the front of it. It's the
I
bees
haven't
just
seen
coming
that
out to
yet.
cool down.
And I go in my greenhouse, and man, it could be 105 degrees up in there. So I can imagine, and I have my doors open,
Right, right.
so I can imagine what a beehive has to be. It's got to be crazy hot up in there.
Yeah,
But
it starts that way, and then once they realize it, they start fanning it down. They're like their own little air conditioners.
that's pretty cool. I was supposed to go in it today. Every day I say I'm gonna do it, and then I say no, I'm not. I ain't gonna bother them. But I'm so interested in seeing the progress,
Right.
seeing what they have done since the last time I've been in there. But and our weather is warm, so they still out and about. Now they should still be able to get plenty of stuff to eat, right? The pollen or nectar or whatever.
Yeah, since I mean I'm in Virginia, I don't know of all the stuff that's like down there in Georgia and stuff like that. But you guys are definitely a different climate than we are. And
Mm-hmm.
just the other day, I mean, it barely hit. I think it was 60 up here, and my
Wow.
girls were they were bringing in pollen and stuff like that as well. So
Okay.
I'm sure if they're doing it here, where it looks like everything is falling off the leaves, especially with your tropical fruits and stuff, they're probably
Yeah.
enjoying that.
Well, I got a lot of my stuff in my greenhouse, and man, I don't know why I haven't been messing with greenhouses because my stuff growing like it's spring or
Really,
the growing season. So I'm excited about that.
that's awesome.
But I'm hoping that when I do bring them out, that the bees actually make a difference, and I want to see the difference in the taste of the honey, because man, we got some flowers that smell so amazing, and if they can get some of that pollen and make some honey with that, man, yeah, I think
That
it's
would be
gonna be,
cool.
yeah, I think that's gonna be great. So in your climate, is there anything special you have to do to keep your bees at this time of year?
Just for the winter, usually a lot of people have different, I guess, takes on what they want to do when preparing for winter. One of the things that I used to do was I like to give them an extra, it's kind of like a spacer in between, like right above the inner cover to give them some like adequate ventilation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your bees, as you have naturally, we have wind that comes inside the hive and blows into the hive, it creates moisture. Obviously, we know they're flapping their wings, producing heat, so they're creating moisture. So I like to try to put a ventilation box to be able to help keep them dry because if you don't, if too much condensation gets in there, it'll actually
Mm-hmm.
drip from the cover on the
Right.
inside and it'll drip down on the bees and freeze them to death, basically.
Hmm. So, Brooke want to know, how often do bees need to be tended?
So it's seasonal. When you start in the spring, I mean, me personally, I have missed it all winter, so I like to get in there at least once every 2 weeks. Sometimes it's better if you can do it once every week. Make sure that they're growing their comb. Your queen's in there. You got some fresh brood growing. They're starting to go really well. The numbers start to multiply, and that'll also give you a good indication on how they're doing right before it's time to put on the supers. Usually, once I put on the supers at the beginning of spring,
Mm-hmm.
and let it roll. I usually don't check it as much. I'll just occasionally pop the lid, once every 2 weeks, make sure, hey, they still doing good. Make sure they don't get honey locked. As summer approaches, I would still check them the same at least uh, once every 2 weeks. And then when winter approaches, I like to slow down on it. Make sure that their weight's good. You can just like kind of tip it one side and stuff like that. Make sure their weight's good, but you want to give them that time to propolize their boxes to seal up any air gaps and stuff, so the wind won't come by and chill them. If you're in a colder
Right.
temperature zone.
So I know that you live, near farmland. So Grace, if I want to know, because of the sprays, should you be concerned with bees?
So that is really good. Around here, yeah, I'm surrounded by farmland, and actually we have like AEP, which is our electric company. They tend to spray instead of cutting grass by the power lines. They tend to spray by the power lines. Being a beekeeper, you actually have that right to be able to, like here in Virginia, you have the right to be able to call the company and say, "Hey, I'm a beekeeper. I keep bees. I want to be added on to receive a call to be able to, know when you guys are getting ready to spray or what you're spraying with to see if it's harmful for my bees." And they are once you get put on the list, they're supposed to be able to give you that heads up so you can usually cover up your hives and things like that. Also, being next to farmland, you can talk with your farmer because certain chemicals, once you become a beekeeper, and let's say if you have a farm yourself and you register that you have bees on it,
Hmm.
the farmers, once you tell them they've have become aware of it, they have to be able to, I guess, kind of get put on a list or to know what chemicals they're using so that they don't just kill your bees. It's
Right.
kind of like a check and balance system with some of the farmers. Like around here with me, I spoke with the guy that owns the land beside us, and they they're German Baptist. They raise like a lot of their crop. It's like hay and then soybeans and stuff for their cattle.
Right.
So they actually just spray. I guess it's like the cow fertilizer and stuff, but that
Hmm.
doesn't affect my bees. But they've already told me if anything were to change as far as like they change spraying or stuff like that, they would give me a heads up or they would let me know.
Okay. Okay. Hey guys, if I did not speak to y'all, I apologize. Hey, my wife ain't on here with me, so I don't know proper etiquette. But to everybody in the chat, welcome. We had Jared with Beehive in the house, and he's gonna school us. So any information that you need to know about beekeeping 101 today, don't get too advanced because most of us don't know none of this stuff, and you'll go across everybody else's head. But if you are new, you're interested, you have some questions, hey, feel free to throw something up in the chat, and we'll try to get to it. All right, so I'm all scrolled all up. So Andale, Grace of Fire, Audrey, Living Life. I say hey to J3G, Don Ray, G Mama Groves, Mike Chaotic, Don Ray, bro. Time is honey.
I noticed some of my beekeeping friends are coming in here.
Okay,
The
I was
family
gonna
and
say
friends.
okay. So that's on Facebook right there. So hey, Facebook, welcome. I'm glad y'all here. I'm glad all of y'all are here. Any questions, guys?
Good to see
I'm
everybody.
telling you, this is stuff that I would have loved to, have access to being able to ask somebody. I would have probably been done this if somebody could have actually told me what steps to take first. Now, I did some research, so I did have a basic, really basic knowledge, but you're kind of afraid to make that first step, And now that I have, I'm so interested in this. I'm doing, man. I'm looking at YouTube channels that I've been online. Me and my wife that signed up for a local beekeeping. We joined a local bee club, so
Nice.
we haven't gone to a meeting yet. I'm interested in that. I am excited because one thing we found out, so much stuff is needed. Like if we ever get to a point where we want to harvest honey, or you have to buy all that equipment unless you're involved in the club, which they sometimes will rent it to you or lend it
Hmm.
to you. And I
Yep.
think that's amazing, because that's a lot of money.
Hmm.
But we excited. It's almost like a kid with a new toy. We just now she going to the class with me. Is she gonna actually go to the hive? Is she gonna actually put on a suit? And I don't know about that. We're gonna have to work on that
She,
one.
you never know. She may, when my wife first we were starting, she was like, I'm not messing with no bees. She said, you can be crazy by yourself. But as she's learned more and
That
stuff with
time
me and
to
everything, she was like, I want this suit. I want this suit. So we got her, her own customized suit. And then she'll get out there and she'll work just as hard as I am out there now taking care of the bees.
okay. So she actually goes into the hive and all that stuff now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. She at first she used to not do it, and then she would. And I think when she first started, I'll give you a little story with it. When we first started beekeeping, um, she wouldn't go in and mess with the hives, but she wanted to be sweet one day, and she wanted to help me out because I was working on my hives, and
Right.
I went back inside. So she wanted to hop on the lawnmower, and she wanted to help me. She wanted me to help or wanted to help me mow around my beehives. So
Right.
I'm in there getting some equipment together and different stuff like that. And then I kind of just peek out the window, see how she's doing. And our land had a little bit of a hill. All of a sudden, I see this girl just flying up the hill with this mower. Not even, I was like, oh man, I'm like, why is she coming? I was like, wait a minute, where's the mower? This girl's just sprinting up the hill. So she comes in and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like, what happened? She's like, well, I was out there trying to mow around your bees. She said, and I caught onto one of the side of the posts and I knocked the whole hive over.
Oh.
So I was like, oh man. So I got in my suit. She left the mower on and everything. And I went down there and that was, I guess, the first, I don't want to say heartbreak story really, because the bees did fine. I mean, they just knocked over. Some of the frames fell out. It was still early. I just went over, put the boxes up, put all the frames up, and I just at that point at first I told her, I was like, look, don't worry about mowing around the bees. I appreciate you. I was like, but I'll take care of the bees from now on.
So tell me, do they get upset with the mowing and weed eating around the hives?
Um, I actually like to do mine either early in the morning or when it's starting to get dusk. I'll even put on a little flashlight if I have to, and I'll weed eat around them and stuff like that. Or if I feel comfortable with the bee suit, let's say you're doing it like I guess during the day, the middle of the day when a lot of the bees are out.
Right.
As long as you got your suit on, you can do it. But it's like the noise and the vibration. They'll come out. Like you'll see a lot of bees come out and they'll start
Mhm.
flying around. They don't try to attack you. They're basically just trying to see what's going on.
Right.
But then as you like move over from hive to hive and you're going, by the time you get to the next row of hives, the girls are usually calmed back down.
All right, guys. I'm trying to keep on. I think I'm doing all right. I ain't see no questions. I ain't see no questions that I missed. Yeah. So I was wondering about that because I'm like, do I need to put on my suit to go and mold out back there? And I'd be standing out there like sitting on the crate. I got some crates stacked up right by the hive, and I just sit there and watch them do their thing.
Right.
It's amazing to me how they just materialize out of air and just end up at the hive. Like, where in the world did it just come from? And there'd be a whole bunch of them at one time.
Yep.
But I am loving that process.
Well, see, that's a big thing. Just like I talked with you before about it. One of the best things that you can do to be able to end up, I guess, learning from your bees or learning about your bees is get like a thinking chair. Like I told you, sit down in front of them and just watch them because they taught me a lot. They give you a lot of indication, like the smells that they can produce, the aromas. You start to realize, like having myself experiencing sick hives before and stuff like that, it's a different smell than a healthy hive. You can see
Right.
when you possibly have some robbing going on, the way that you can watch some of the bee activity in the front, or just what I guess what they're trying to do and what their main focus is. Whether you see a ton of pollen coming in and different things like that, it's really cool. I mean, I've even seen a bee starting to produce some wax as they're like at the bottom. They're at the bottom trying to get ready to go into it, but I could see their wax glands on their abdomen start to produce little pieces of wax.
Really.
Just from watching them, it was really cool.
So, okay, I ain't gonna even ask that. That's a little. So, Grace and Fire want to know if there's a store to buy kits, or how did she go about actually getting started buying the stuff she needs?
So there is several different stores and stuff like that. As far as like getting equipment, I mean, I don't know exactly where you live, but there's a lot, and they ship them. I mean, and there's a lot of like American made companies and different stuff like that. But I mean, you have like I use Man Lake. Then close to me, also we have like Dadant and stuff like that. And I always look at different stores because different stores have different, I guess, stuff going on with it. So usually when you can, like, if you Google one of these stores or a beekeeping store and stuff like that, you may even have a smaller shop local to where you're living at. We used to have one before it shut down here in Virginia that you could go, that they were like, I guess, a smaller merchandiser with bee equipment, but you were able to buy all the stuff that you needed. Um, but once you find one of those and you start looking, they will actually they do sell complete excuse me complete hive setups, and you can end up just getting, ordering that, and then you just have to put it together. But usually those websites and stuff like that, they even have catalogs. Like if you've ever done a seed catalog, you can type in just bee catalog, and you have different places that'll start sending you some bee catalogs so you can see all the equipment and stuff that they have.
Okay, so my chaotic garden said that he had a question about collecting royal jelly and pollen. What would be the purpose of that? Why would you do that?
Well, some people, they actually like consider it like a delicacy to eat, like royal jelly and stuff
Oh,
like
really?
that. And royal jelly is what the bees produce to make a queen. And
Okay. Okay.
pollen, a lot of people, like, you can make take your pollen for, I mean, many uses. Like you can make like your own patties and different stuff like that. Some people like to use tinctures, make pollen tinctures and stuff like that with the pollen. Have like pollen traps they set up as sometimes when the girls come in to the hive, they got their legs full of pollen. They can go like inside of it, and it actually will drop some of the pollen down and catch it into a case from the hive.
Huh. Okay. uh, but that's not something commonly done, is it? That is that just, or do people do that commonly?
People do that. It's not as regular. I guess certain people. It depends on, because see, it's just like with anything that you do. You have many different ways that like bees can go. Like, I mean, when you do beekeeping, like some people do pollination, some people do strictly honey, some people will just grow bees to sell them. I mean, there's just different stuff. Some people just grow bees just to get a bunch of wax to make candles. I mean,
Mm,
it just really depends on what people's goals are.
okay. So Psalms 146 wanted to know if bees prefer wild flowers over clover, or they just go for whatever is available.
Um, from my experience with it, bees, they'll in a sense get what they can get. Down here with us, some of the first stuff that we start seeing is some of the clover and some of the like dandelions and stuff like that. So I usually don't cut my grass in spring for the first month or so. They uh, they will actually like just go down, and you'll start seeing them cover the dandelions and the clover. And then when the wildflowers start to come up, they'll start going to that. And what's amazing is bees, they know what's coming. Like they can, once a bee finds that and it comes back and it lets the hive know that they can find like where the source is. Oh, they'll start hitting everything. It's like basically like a traffic controller. Once they come back in and let them know, like, hey, we got this going on, and let's start like going basically where they need to go. But as
Mm.
far as like what they pick first, I don't think it's so much as what they like one thing over another. I think it's when they can find it, or when they find it, they'll just kind of move with what they're going with.
So we was thinking about planting beds in between hives. Is that a good idea? It will stop them from having to go anywhere. So I don't know if that'll make it bad for us later on, or would it be a problem at all?
Um, I would say if you wanted to put beds there, you could. As far as that, you may not. It may be in a sense a while if you see them, going for it. Usually, it's when I tell people, it's the bees go for flowers, but they also go for trees. So they can get a lot of pollen and nectar from certain trees. that are around. So like a lot of people, they'll say, hey, I'll just plant, a bunch of wildflowers in my backyard and stuff like that. Will that be enough for the bees? And it would take a lot of, I guess, wildflowers or regular flowers to be able to sustain a hive, to keep them going, to produce enough pollen or nectar for them. So it's more if you wanted to put them there so they would have just a little bit extra just close to their hive. And then also for the looks, if you want to, make it to where they have like beautiful colors around the hive boxes and stuff like that, you definitely could do that. It wouldn't, I guess with that, it wouldn't hurt to put them up there.
Okay, so with the honey, you would think that there would be a lot of animals that is attracted to it. Is it a problem?
Um, well, when you have them in a hive, usually you put your hives at a certain height. I mean, we all know that one of the number ones that you have that try to get into some of the hives is like a bear. Bear's the number one that they'll try to get in, but a lot of people don't know this, that yeah, bears do eat honey, but the misconception is bears aren't really just after the honey. Their main thing that they want to be able to do is to go in there and get the brood, which is the eggs
Mm.
and the larva, because that's where they get a lot of their nutrients and stuff from.
Mm.
So I've had a hive attacked by a bear where my honey box was left intact, no problem. The honey was still all capped, everything was good to go. But then I look down and find like my brood box, and you see like claw marks across all the eggs, and it was like all chewed up and mashed together. So they're trying to pick out the eggs.
Yeah, so
Um,
I don't think that I'm actually have a problem with a bear. I live in a subdivision, so if a bear come over here, it's gonna be a big issue.
right,
But,
but you also too, you do have like your you can have like, I think, skunks sometimes like to try to get in there or get some of the larvae and stuff like that. But one of the things they always talk about is when you put your hives at a height that makes it a disadvantage for any animals that have to kind of stretch on top of it. If they start to like scratch at the hive and the bees come out, it exposes their softer parts, so like around their bellies and stuff, and they'll get stung. And they'll usually, they don't like to take too many stings with that, so they'll want to just take off.
so what about like raccoons and possums and stuff like that? Do they bother them at all?
I've never had a possum or a raccoon. For speaking from experience, I had a skunk one time that was trying to get into one of my hives, like was clawing at the bottom, and we actually saw that that's what happened when that skunk started to get stung pretty good. It kind
Hmm.
of took off really fast. But I haven't had any bad experiences with raccoons.
Yeah, no skunks either. Yeah, like that's not. Yeah, I can't even imagine a skunk being in this neighborhood. But
Sure.
yeah, those are not something that we gonna generally have an issue with. Now, because I'm a kid with a new toy, I went on Amazon and I bought like a whole kit of stuff. Um, and I did notice that it had beetle traps. So I guess that's what they call it, right?
Yep. The hive beetle traps.
High beetle traps. So is there anything special I have to do besides sit them up there? I just open it up and sit them up on top of the frames.
Well, it depends on, I kind of like, there's different versions of them. If they're empty with it, you have to, usually you can use like, I use like vegetable oil in there. And what'll happen, the bees will um, drive the hive beetles like into that area. And once they go down into it, they hit that oil, they'll drown. Um, so you have to just see if there's anything. Some of them have, you can get like a powder you can put in there. Um, but one of the natural things you can do with that, without the hive beetle trap, is what a lot of people have been doing, and I did it myself this year, was using like peppermint candy inside of there. Hive beetles don't like peppermint or like the smell of peppermint oil and stuff like that.
Really?
So, yep. So I would open up like say I open up my box between my deep and my medium. I would go and put 4 to 6 pieces of peppermint candy, which is still the white granulated sugar, so the bees can eat it. But with this, the aroma starts, as the bees are traveling, starts kicking the aroma up inside of the hive and stuff like that. It kept. I mean, I hardly saw any hive beetles this year because
So
of
I
that.
see somebody say that the bees went crazy. Hostas, is that? I'm assuming that's a plant.
Yep, and we have hostas in the front of our house. Hosta start is like a little green plant, and then they'll grow these giant stems, and they produce like the ones we have produce purple flowers,
Hmm.
and it's like a bunch of almost like teacups pointing like down at an angle. Yeah, our bees before they dried up and stuff, our bees were hitting that very hard.
So, do you know any plants that will give your honey more depth, actually make it taste better, more profound? Any plant that you can plant around your area that will give your honey a better taste?
Um, well, like for us, depending on I guess your growing zone or what flavors I guess you like. Like I tend to like I like like the buckwheat honey. It's more of a darker honey, but it's more like earthy flavor for me. So you can plant buckwheat for your bees to get.
Hmm.
Um, but also to change I guess like the flavor of your honey would take
Hmm.
a lot of like one certain plants. Like we have a lot of tulip poplar trees. So when our spring hits, the honey tastes a lot more floral, like it has a very sweeter taste. But then as you get like into our summer and our fall, we have sourwood. Sourwood, a lot of people love sourwood because it's a distinct difference. It's like that in between mixture of floral and earthy taste.
Hmm.
But it's
Sourwood.
sourwood. Yep. It's actually I think that's the one that you tried. It was that one closer to the end that you tried. It was a little bit darker honey. It
Hmm.
wasn't that golden yellow, but it was like that amber color
Mm.
before the darker one. That was the sourwood honey that we had.
All those
Um,
were good though. I mean, they were all
yeah.
good. So, is it a such thing as a bad honey?
Um, I mean, you can if you let your honey ferment, it can be bad. It can turn bad. But I think there's only one honey out there. I think it's like mountain laurel honey that it actually can be potent to us if we eat too much of it. But I
Mm.
don't think a lot of people have to worry about getting that, from their bees and stuff like that. Certain plants that produce that or can give that off to be able to make that, but it's not around like most of your places like where we're at and stuff.
So, I heard somebody talking about making mead. I think it's called. Is
Making
the
mead.
mead? So, do honey actually go bad? I mean, how do you actually make a honey go bad, or do it go bad?
Um, so when you're dealing with honey, the main thing that the bees like that's why when you're like getting honey out of a hive, you always wait for your cells to be capped. They want to have a capping on the front of it. And what that does is that allows the moisture content inside of the honey to come down. To keep your honey good, you do not want any honey. Like there's a special tool. It's called a refractometer. It can help measure the moisture content in your honey. Like after you get it spun down and you can check it, but you never want to see that. I like to keep mine at least 18 or below,
Mm.
just because you start getting above 18%, you'll start causing that fermentation. It has to mean the water and honey content is too off. And if that's how you make mead, mead is literally just you can do it with water and honey, and then over
Mm.
time that water will ferment your honey.
Wow.
So you want to make sure that once your honey is capped, you want to be able to either keep it down. But that's the only thing as far as dealing with like your honey going bad. If you extract your honey and it's got a good moisture content at like let's say 16%. I did some honey this year, it was at 16.5% for the moisture content. You can put that in jars, you can put it in a bucket, however you want to store it. You may get some crystallization, which if you've seen crystallized honey, it looks like it gets solidified. And then you
Mm.
can just stick it in like some warm water and stuff like that, put it in the sun a little bit. It'll melt those crystals. But as far as if your moisture content's good and you got it in jars and stuff like that, it won't go bad on you.
Okay. So, Mike Chaotic Garden want to know having tropical plants, would it give it a tropical taste?
Um, so I don't have tropical plants up here, but I would imagine it would definitely change the taste of it, especially if you have like an abundance of a certain plant and they can get their pollen and their nectar from it. I think it would definitely change it.
Hmm. So I done jumped all the way to the goodies and all. So, all right, you got a little knowledge, you got your hive, you got some bees in there. You should check every 2 weeks, as you say. What are we looking for every 2 weeks?
So every 2 weeks, you want to make sure some of the basics that I look for is you want to get in there. You want to make sure that they're growing. You want to make sure that their comb is looking really good, like aligned with it. You don't want to see like a bunch of wonky comb in there. You want to look to see if you have some brood, like good pattern of brood, which is the eggs, across a frame. You want to make sure that you have day old eggs, and like 1 to 3 day old eggs, which looks like little pieces of rice. And the reason you want to make sure you have those eggs is just to make sure, in case you are nervous with your bees or you're trying to look and find that queen. If you're not able to find your queen and you're spending a lot of time, you're like, man, I don't have enough time to actually find her. You can use that as a determination to see that within the last 1 to 3 days that you did have some like fresh eggs done, so you know that the queen was in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I look to make sure like there's no swarm cells or like a supersedure cell just to make sure they're not like fed up with their queen or anything. And of course, then you can look for those hive beetles. Usually, the hive beetles are you'll know if you have those because you'll start seeing them scatter pretty good. But it's just like a kind of like a little checklist that you're going in to look at.
Right. So the hive beetles, is there acceptable amount to see, or you should see none?
I mean, you don't want to see any, but I mean, you come down to where sometimes you'll see one or two that'll just they'll sneak their way in there, but the bees can corral them into a corner and stuff like that. But as far as it depends on, like I said, based on experience. I see some people, they'll start asking me right away when they see one beetle. They're like, "Oh my gosh, do I have an infestation?" And it's like, "Well, where did you see it?" And they're like, "Well, I saw it on the lid." I was like, "Did you see any on your frames?" They're like, "No, I didn't see any in my frames." I was like, "Well, then you're okay. When you see it on your lid, try to squish it or try to get it out of there." But yeah, unless you're seeing, you know, 30, 40, 50 of them, you
Uh,
may see one or two depending on your location.
so I think Tom is coming through in a minute. Okay, who's that? Up less than 1 acre, man.
I believe I said,
So how close? You say you got less than an acre. How close can a hive be to a house?
um, as far as your location with it, I mean, you could put it really where you want to. It's really where your comfortable level is, the comfortability level. I've seen some people that they'll put it. I mean, they like to use, say they got a brick house. They like to use the heat from the brick on the back side of their hives just to keep it warm when because that brick's getting the sun all day.
Right.
They will actually put it within 5 feet of their wall, just enough to walk around. Um, but usually, like for me, I like to leave. I think I probably got mine about 50 to 75 yards from my house, and that's because I have kids and stuff like that. I don't want them to get attacked or anything, but I want to give them enough space that they can have like their own space, and I can have my own space if I just want to sit outside.
So Thomas decided to come and pay us a visit. So I missed a little bit of what you said, but I'm sure the chat heard it. But yeah, I have seen. I think Led he keeps them up right up next to his house. Um, what my wife actually found out is, as long as you're not doing nothing silly, they don't bother you. You can just walk right by them and they don't bother you. They haven't bothered me yet. Let me put that in there. Not
Right.
yet. And I'm looking forward to that first thing. No, but yeah, it's gonna happen, and I'm just like, when, But I walk past them all the time, and like you said, you told me not to walk, in front of the entrance
Hmm.
to the place, and I don't do that, but they don't bother me. So far so good.
It's good. It's
So
good.
is it because of the kind of bees we got, or is just generally how they are?
Um, well, the kind of bees that you have, I mean, they are more docile, but usually, I mean, from experience and doing research and stuff, from looking at it, most of the time, if you're once your bees, you start working your bees, or they get used to even like some of the pheromone and the smells and stuff. Like I made that mistake that I was trying to get into and work them, and I was standing right in front of them, and I'm like, man, why do I keep getting stings on my knees and stuff like that? Well, it's because I'm blocking the front of their hive, and they're trying to come out, and they're smacking into me, and they don't know who I am, so they think I could be like a bear trying to steal something from them. So once I learned to either check the hives from the side or from the back, it changed the whole temperament of the hive and the girls on how they react to you.
So North Carolina Gardener, that's where I was, and it had to be over a year and a half that I've been saying the same thing. And I mean, pulling that trigger is the whole thing. Once you get started, you kind of roll with it. You get more serious about it because you got them. So if you have any questions right now, on what you need to do to go ahead and get, you know, started in that direction, feel free to ask.
Hmm.
But yeah, so when we never been to one of those B club, I guess it's a meeting. I don't know what it is, a class. What should we expect?
So depending on how it is, like there's a little difference. Like if you're going to like a B class, you'll be going there with usually people that are either just got their bees or have had them for a little bit but don't know much about it and they want to learn more. And you'll actually have beekeepers there that will give you some material and they'll teach you kind of some of the basics and the rundowns of you know what you could expect as like an overall general
Mm,
of like what beekeeping is and how to keep bees and stuff like that. But when you go to these bee club meetings, there's usually different topics and stuff like that. Like up here with us, we had um, one of the state inspectors come from with the USDA department. They came by and we're talking about like inspection to check for varroa mites and how you can go about treating them. They got one coming up this month, or I guess would be November. They got one talking about like hive management for the winter. So like what the steps you could do to get them ready for the winter. Well, not get them ready, but like kind of tuck them in for the final call before winter. What things you can use as far as like extra bee feeds or different things like that that you can put on them and to help give them their best chance of survival.
right. So how many months of winter y'all get, or cold weather do y'all get where they can't actually do feed for themselves?
Here lately, usually, I mean, it can be from now on, but like usually we're still like this coming week we'll be in the 70s still. Our
Mm,
temperatures changed a little bit, but as like last year, ours hit like the last week of December, and then we were, I couldn't go into my hives and stuff until March with it. So basically, from the end of December to March for us, we had a couple days that it was warmer, and when you get those warmer days, not so much to go and open the hives or do a full inspection. You can say, hey, if I have some extra like sugar or fondant on them, I can, you know, open the lid real quick, put that stuff down, and shut them, or I'll go up to them and just see if some of the bees are flying, just
mm.
to make sure they're still alive.
Uh, so you ever have a problem with any with them dying over the winter?
I've lost a few when I was first starting. Like one of my first years, I got them so late in the year. Like I got them, I think it was in June, almost August. So that was brand new. I didn't know enough experience, and I didn't feed them enough and stuff to have them ready. So they starved in the middle of
Right.
November. So it was a
Mm.
pretty tough hit. But usually, um, I think I've been doing it 6 years now. I've lost at least one every year, and sometimes it's not even. I could do everything right 100%, but they still just don't make it.
Okay. So soy sister want to know, what do you do for mites?
So when I'm treating for mites, like varroa mites, like I was doing a second, I guess, way of treatment. I use what's called oxalic acid. I personally like oxalic acid because I feel like I can help, or it keeps me in check. Like I don't want to just throw a strip on there and just call it done for so many days. I like to actually be with my girls or my hives as much as I can. So I like to use oxalic acid with a vaporizer, um, and be able to treat them that way. I treat them, once every 5 days. Yeah, once every 5 days for 25 days, just to give them a whole brood cycle of like the life of a bee when they put an egg in the cell at one days, and then by going that 25 days, a queen's brood cycle is usually 21 days from where that. But in that process, they're put the larvae in, they're growing, and then they cap the cell off, and then the cell's back open. So if you treat them within those, every either 4 or 5 days for 25 days, you'll get a whole cycle to knock out basically as much as the mites, if not all of them.
So what the treatment look like? I mean, how do you actually apply treatment to?
So I got a vaporizer. I actually got mine from Lara Bees. He's a producer. He produces different kinds of like vaporizers you can use on your hive, and it comes with these little caps that you can actually put like your acid. You buy it in a bag. Usually, like you can treat like a gram or 2 gram. I think the caps are 2 grams. You can put them in there, heat the vaporizer up. It gets temperatures up to like 430 degrees. And you just put it inside the hive or at the front of the hive and stuff like that. You put the cap on there and you flip it over, and it drops the temperature. And as the temperature's rising back up, it drops it down to usually around 330 degrees. And as it's picking up that temperature, the acid is starting to vaporize and then comes out of a copper tube and spreads, just vaporizes like in the hive.
Yeah, it's like I got so much more to learn. Boy, I
Well,
swear.
see, what's wild with that though is when so like for you're at the winter. I treated the bees when I had them here before you guys got your bees, and
Mm,
then you'll go through the winter, and then when you go to the spring, from now to the spring, I guess one of the tricks I learned is always staying a season ahead. So like we're approaching winter. So
mhm.
my mindset is once I get these bees tucked in, I'm already working in spring, getting boxes together, making sure everything's set up, and then so on. You work with it. So by this, you learn all this stuff now, and even just hearing some of this stuff, you'll know that by when it comes time to treat, because you can treat. I treat with my mites usually. I like to do it coming out of winter, like in the spring before I put my supers on, and then I may even treat after I first pull them off with my honey before. It's it's just a way that you can do preventative, I guess, measures with them. But you'll pick up that knowledge so
Mm.
fast just because, like I said, it's always like a learning curve. You're always just pumping information out. So much to learn.
So I don't want to go back to honey again because I want to. I want to jump back into honey. So I guess without actually being able to see them, you can't really explain how to identify the different kind of bees that's in the cell. But can you tell us what kind of bees that's in that makes a hive?
Yeah. So you have there's three types of bees. You have your queen bee, of course, which is the um, biggest bee. Everyone always laughs at me because they're like, "How do you know what the queen bee is?" And I was like, "That's the queen with the big old booty." That's how I always look for that big old booty. Um, but then you have your worker bee and like your drone bee, which is the difference with those that you can tell a drone bee is a bigger bee. You can always see it. It's the male bees, so you can actually like see them in size comparison. They're a lot wider, and not so much longer. There's wider bees with it. And
Mm,
then with your worker bees, those are the ones that they stay. inside. They never come out to go collect pollen, nectar, none of that. They stay there, and their main job is to take care of um, the eggs in there and the brood and stuff like that. And one thing that's pretty cool with them that when you do your research and you can see is like their eyes, like I always like to tell them even by their eyes, not just the size but the eyes, because a worker bee, they're constantly walking all over the frame seeing it, so their eyes are a little bit bigger from what you can see when you're looking, like from I guess their position when they're sitting on like the brood and stuff like that.
Mm.
So I like to um, I like to be able to like see it. It's weird in comparison because you look at the three types of bees. The queen obviously has the biggest butt. The drone is a wider, kind of fatter bee. They do have
Mhm.
bigger eyes than you would say your worker, but they're like the fatter bee. And then the
Mhm.
worker bees are your smaller bees, just like their eye slant is a little different, so that when they're inside the hive they can see.
So the queen, she mates with the workers or the drones or who's
The queen mates with the drones.
the drones?
She actually, so like when you have, most of the time when you get your bees, you usually have, excuse me, you have a mated queen already. But if your hive was to ever, get rid of that queen or produce a virgin queen, they have to um, go and do like a mating flight. And when the queens go out to do a mating flight, they end up mating with the drones. And they don't just do like one drone; they'll mate with several drones
Mm-hmm.
in their time, because a queen, like a regular a bee, like a spring, you have different kinds of bees. Like you have like a spring bee, or like the normal, I guess, warmer weather bees and stuff that are going on. And usually those are between the 21 and 24 days old. But then you have, when the winter's approaching, your queen can produce winter bees. And sometimes those bees can live up to 3 or 4 months. Yep, he's right about that with their eyes. Um, you can Your queen will go out and mate with several drones because I mean, I've never seen obviously a queen. I've never had queens that last that long, as far as, because usually they supersede them or you change them out. But queens they can live up to 7 years, is what they say. They can
Mm.
live up to 7 years. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, that was
somebody
the
sex.
question. They say they can live up to 7 years, but usually, like as far as producing, they'll mate with several drones because they can lay for many more years. They're the one bee in the hive that they'll be alive when the rest of the bees are gone.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So, of course, I asked you these questions before. I mean, I asked you a ton of questions. So, I feel kind of crazy asking you the same questions again, but I know it's people who haven't heard these questions. Far as the superseding and the swarm uh, queen cells, how do you tell which one is what?
So usually when you're looking at when you're looking at a frame, and
Oh,
let's say
hold
like,
on, Jerry. Hold on. Let me explain what they are first, because I know
okay,
some people probably
so
have no clue.
when you have a colony, and let's say the queen, they don't like the queen's not producing really well, or maybe she's sick and the other bees know it, you will get, or she's just getting too old. The bees itself will end up creating a supersedure cell, which is a cell that they will produce to make another queen, but not to like split the colony, but it's to basically overthrow the queen that they have in there now. Um, but then if you get to a hive that is doesn't have enough room to grow, or they start getting like too crowded and things like that, usually in the springtime it happens. You have what's called a swarm, like when your bees swarm, and when your bees swarm, they will actually produce swarm cells that will basically, they'll create another queen, and then once they create that queen and it's time for them, the old queen and some bees, they'll say, hey, we're ready to leave, so we're going to take off. So they will leave, and they will leave behind this virgin queen to be able to go get mated, but split it in half. And when you want to, like, as far as like a depiction, I have a frame right here. So this is just like a deep frame. Usually with a supersedure cell, in my experiences, whenever I see them, they're usually between, like on the top of the comb or kind of midway through. When I see like they're somewhere in this general region, or if you have like, say your comb doesn't go all the way to the end of your frame, say there's a little gap in the middle, sometimes they'll actually grow it right on the side of it, like kind of sticking down. So like if you have like your comb, let's say they grow it like this, and you have a space in between here. I've seen them grow it right here on the side, or like I said, in just kind of this upper section.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a swarm cell, what they'll do is usually if you have comb, let's say it's sitting down here on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time you'll see your cells. If the comb goes all the way to the frame, you'll see like swarm cells here on the bottom of the wood, or usually at the very bottom of the frame. But the difference is a supersedure. You'll see usually like one, maybe two in this upper section. But once you see swarm cells, I mean, I've seen it in a deep box. I've seen 16 cells on a matter of a few frames, just all on the bottom, where they're
Right.
basically trying to make a queen as soon as possible to,
Yeah.
I say, get out of Dodge.
Uh, and when they do have a swarm, they take the whole hive with them.
A swarm is usually um, like half of the colony that's in there now.
Mm-hmm.
You'll take half of the colony. We'll go with that queen, but they'll leave enough bees behind to kind of take care of the brood that's in there, take care of the eggs that are in there, and then even take care of the like part of the new queen, like for when she either hatches or has already hatched, and then they'll start growing with it. But that's why you usually do your swarm or your splits. You do your splits so they won't swarm in the spring, and then when you do it in the spring, it starts to give them enough time to start building back up so that you can be able to let them start producing honey.
Mm-hmm. He said, does he get attached to certain colonies? Uh,
Oh,
or,
that's a good one. I have a lot of colonies. For me, it's different experiences that you get. Like when I did my first split, you get attached to that because it's like, hey, I just did this split with it. Certain queens, I like the look of them. Like I love a tiger stripe queen where they have like a nice solid like black bottom with orange stripes across it. It just looks really cool to me. Um, but it's usually just different situations. Like my son just started getting into beekeeping with me. So the hive that he got into, he really like fell in love with them just because he was able to like take his hands with it, and he was using his gloves and they were walking on his hands. He got to actually enjoy those finer moments. So it's like, as me personally, I want all my bees to make it, but I'm like, I'm going to make sure when I do what I can to keep this bee to survive, or make sure they're doing good. So because he's going to remember that experience. But I
so
do it. I end up doing loving all of them though.
if your bees create a swarm and you go ahead and you got another box ready, you put them swarm cells in another box. Do they automatically know that they don't need to go nowhere now, or they how
Yeah,
that work?
so usually when you have like when you do a split yourself and there's swarm cells in there, usually so you have the mixing, well, you'll have that one queen's pheromone that'll be on the original hive. And usually when it comes to, you can do this, I personally like to, when I do splits, if you already like if you find 100% like capped cell in there, some people destroy them. I don't like to destroy them because it's an indication. I mean, if it's already capped, they're gonna swarm. So sometimes, depending on the size of the hive or the colony, and if I can find the queen, I'll actually take um, the queen that's already like, I guess the fertile queen, the original queen. I'll take her and move her over and
Oh,
leave
okay.
the regular queen cell there. Um,
Hmm.
or I guess the cap queen cell, just because that queen's wants to be able to move, or she's already preparing to move. So if you go ahead and you cut out the process of like basically having them swarm, you can go and move them. But now if you catch it early enough, like I've done it where the splits I did this year, I noticed they had a swarm cell on the bottom and it was still open, but it had just the egg and some of the royal jelly, but it wasn't capped. I went ahead and moved some of that over, shook some bees in there with some eggs, and did a split that way, and they did just fine.
Okay. So North Carolina Garden want to know how many bees come in the hive when you order them, and do you really have to have that many to start?
So usually when you order, like say you order a bee package, when it comes like in the spring, it's usually a 3 pound package of bees. So it usually comes with up to 10,000 bees and then one queen. And that's usually I guess I'm gonna say the smallest that you usually can get when you're going as far as like ordering bees. Um, and one thing that I tell people is that's usually just the average you want to have, like when you're starting with it, because when those bees, you take them from that box or from that package and you put them in your box, if you don't have any drawn comb, let's say you have empty frames, no drawn comb, and you got to feed them, the sugar water to start producing their wax. In that period you got to produce wax before the queen starts to lay, and then once that, like, it's going to be several days before that queen gets out of her cell and starts to lay. So that you want as many bees as you can producing wax and stuff like that. um, it can seem overwhelming when when you're dumping all those bees and you see that giant pile of bees, but once they get into that hive and they settle down, it actually is, it's not as many as you think, if that makes sense, like when you go to see it like inside of the frames.
Okay. So North Carolina Garden. Hmm. So Jared, just to be clear, do you part with any of your hives, or do you sell bees or anything like that?
Yeah, so I usually, some people here locally and stuff, I'll pick up packages, and people that want packages, I usually can go get them, um, and I'll either deliver to them or they'll come and pick them up to be able to do it. I have sold some of my hives in the past, um, which I want to go doing forward. Be able to either sell some nukes or packages or hives to help people out, um, and
So
different things
when you
like
say
that.
nukes, what is a nuke?
So a nuke is usually, I mean, you have different sizes, but the average thing is a nuke is like a 5 frame, kind of want to say like a starter hive. It's got your frames of pollen already. The queen's lay. I mean, it's got frames of pollen and bee bread, frames of honey, frames of already capped brood, and then frames of eggs, and then enough bees to, just put them right inside of a hive. Like your queen's already laying, she's already producing eggs, so it's, you kind of get a couple month head start over your normal package.
So in your experience, would you think that is that the best way to go to get started? Or would
Uh,
you say?
for me, I personally like starting with a package because then you learn from ground zero, and you learn, like, you get to see every step, like how they're building their comb, make sure it's building it right, and then you can see like how the queen starts laying. It's just kind of like the earlier stages. It's not like you don't pick up 5 frames all together and they're all there, and you're like, oh man, what am I looking for? You can start with watching them actually build it and stuff like that. I was more intrigued with watching them from the beginning.
Mhm.
um, and now I have gotten some nukes with it, but I personally like starting from the package. You don't get to get honey that first year usually, but you get to see, I guess, every step of the growth that you get from them.
So that's your suggestion you to somebody who just starting, don't know much of nothing about nothing, but the basics. You say get a package or a nuke.
Yes, yeah, I would recommend getting a package or a nuke. Now, I mean, if you take, if like say over the winter you take the time and you research and stuff like that, and you're like, man, I'm ready to get into this, and you got a good mentor that's going to help you, oh, that's perfect. That's your perfect time to get a hive, because a mentor can help teach you things, because you got another set of hands-on experience to show you everything that's going on in the hive. But if you're brand new, you're getting ready to make that leap to get your bees, yeah, I would definitely start with getting a package, because that's going to be kind of the easiest to understand and easiest to set up for you to be able to know what you can start working towards.
So North Carolina Gardener, just between me and you. This guy loved this stuff, and he would tell you whatever you need to know. So I say keep in touch with him. He loves teaching. He loves talking about them. So I would say, if you definitely be serious about doing it, keep in touch with him. There are a couple of different kind of people in the world, and I'm one of the people that I love learning. If I get something and I'm perfect at it and there's nothing else to learn from the beginning, I lose interest in it real quick. So I love the progression of it. It's kind of like a video game. If it's a game that I can win, I'm throwing that game away after I won it. When it's one of the ones that I can't win and it just keep on going, I'm in trouble.
All
So
right.
that's why I don't even plug my game up. I ain't plugged it up in years. I'm like an addict with it. So, and it's the same thing with gardening. It's growing and actually learning the best way to grow, and it's always something different. It's a location. It's the amount of water, it's the amount of food, it's the kind of food. It's all that to get the best results from it. So I love that kind of stuff, and I know everybody don't. Everybody just kind of want to be perfect at what they're doing right from the jump. But that's one of the things that keep me captivated about the bees is the fact that it's going to be a constant learning thing, and I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. So, Jared, do you have anything that you think that first of all, do you sell your honey?
We do. Yeah, we do sell our honey. Um, Basically, people just reach out to us, so we can either we can sell it, or they can message us on Facebook and stuff like that. We'll send it to them. I just started doing a pretty cool thing, doing like a honey swap with people from around the United States to get different states honey and stuff like that, and they get my honey just so we can try the different experiences. Um, but yes, we do.
So if you're in a rush, it's probably best to go ahead and start with a nuke that's already set up, right?
Oh yeah,
So
if you're, I guess if like depends on the season you started. Like if you get into the bees, good. If you want to, Mhm. If you want to, let's say, get if you want to get like for example, if you start if in like the January, well not January, but like March and April, you have plenty of time to get a package. But if you're starting in like June and like I want to say June, but like May or June and stuff like that, you can get a nuke, and that will you have skipped, I guess, the process from like March and April and May by getting them later. You get them in the middle of the year, but they're more advanced than like a regular package.
hmm.
So it really
So
just depends on the time frame, like when you get them.
somebody lost a hide to whatever mites.
The varroa mites, yeah, it's Sarah. Yeah, I've had the same happen.
Yeah. So that's some things I'm worried about. That and them all flying away. I am concerned about that. So if I don't have nothing to split them with, and they have swarm cells, I'm pretty much lost, right?
Well, it's not so much your loss with it. I mean, there's different things you can do. Like if your bees were to swarm, and let's say that you're able to find them. I mean, I've went and had one of my hives swarm, and all I had handy was a cardboard box at the time. So I
Oh,
cut a hole in the cardboard box, and I got them in there in the cardboard box
okay.
until I was able to get more equipment as far as like go and get stuff together.
Right.
Um, but usually like that's with the winter right now. Getting that extra set of equipment, whether you want to build it or buy it, and you can do that, basically get that prepared for, I guess, the next season.
Okay. North Carolina Garden. I'm sorry. Yeah, my wife just posted up the channel. Um, guys, yeah. If I didn't mention, he do have a channel. Y'all definitely want to keep in touch with him. If you want, bees, you want honey, you want the knowledge, you definitely want to talk to him because I mean he loves it, and I'm sure he can walk you through it. So I would do it before he, you know, become huge or what. And don't have the time, but but Oh, another question I had was, how often should I be expecting to get honey from my hives? Because I know it can't be ready at spring, right? Or do is it spring?
Um, so for me, it depends with it. So like let's say with your hive that you have, or if you get a brand new hive, and you have that first year hive, you don't want to try to pull any honey that first year because you want to give them everything to get them strong enough to go through the winter. Um, but say you have your hive and you bring them through the winter and you're ready to do it. You put your boxes on in spring. I mean, I've done it where I've put a box on at the end of March, and by the end of April, they have filled up a whole box, and I have to pull it off and get honey.
Really?
It
That quick?
depends on the flow of, I guess, like how much nectar is coming in, how much pollen, and how fast they cap it off. But
Jeez.
usually what people do is they like to get a spring harvest, which they'll usually get at the beginning of summer, and then if your flow is really good, or if you have a strong flow that's kind of going into the summer, coming to the fall, some people like to take just a little bit of a fall harvest, not much, maybe a couple frames, just so they don't get honey bound. But you also want to leave them enough to make it. But usually it's two harvests, but if not, most time it's one harvest.
Okay.
That's on your average. I mean, this year was really good as far as honey production and stuff like that. I mean, I think we were able to actually produce three different or get honey three different times.
Wow. That's a lot. So, are you telling me they'll fill up a whole box of honey in a month?
They can, yes.
Okay, I didn't know that. I had no clue.
Yeah. Yeah, like if they're like, for example, we have a lot of tulip poplar, and this year we had, it also depends on your weather. We had just enough rain to not wash away a lot of the nectar off of like the tulip cups, tulip poplar flower cups, but
Mhm.
it was just like enough rain to keep them open, and they were actually open 2 weeks longer than what they were supposed to. So it actually, the bees, I mean, were just attacking the trees left and right. So I'd go out there, and sometimes you have people that, I mean, like for me, I had so many hives I was trying to keep at, and instead of like pulling one box, like off in a month, I ended up just throwing another box on and then throwing another box on,
Mm,
and some hives ended up with 4 boxes of honey on top of them.
mm.
So it just, if they're pulling it in that fast, but that's more, as you go with it. I ain't trying to overwhelm anyone or anything like that.
So Sarah was saying that swarm catching is where it's at. She can't wait till the spring. Now,
It's That's why I say that's one of the best ways to get free bees.
freebies.
Hmm.
So where do you go? Like if you ain't getting no calls, say you're a newbie and you feel bold enough to try that, where do you go to find that? Because I don't see them. I don't see big swarms of bees hanging from nowhere.
So with swarms, when it's swarm season, usually is going on. Um, I saw there's another good. I saw a comment. I'll talk about that in a minute. The dearth. Um, so when swarm season's around, you can usually, if you got a like a tree, or some people put them on top of their garage and stuff, but you can set up a swarm trap box at a location and just put like a little bit, either some comb or some frames, and then you can put like, it's either something called Swarm Commander or like some lemongrass oil, something to help just have that smell or aroma in there.
Mhm.
But you can actually, even though you don't see bees, bees can travel up to like 3 miles away.
Mm,
So the way I look at it is like, if you set up a swarm trap, just because you don't see the bees doesn't mean they're not around. You can have let's say like you had your hive. If they wanted to swarm, the way they can go up to 3 miles away,
mhm,
land for a little bit, and then say, "Hey, we found our permanent home. Let's move to it." Then they can go up to another 3 miles away to
mm.
wherever they're going to establish their home. It
Right.
just depends on what they know. But usually, if you have like spot, like trees that are, higher trees that are around, you can put them up there. Or if you know someone that's just got some farmland or wooded land, you can put them in there. Like if anyone hunts, you can just place them in the woods. But you can actually reach out, like you guys are part of the beekeepers club, you can reach out to them and say, hey, If there's any swarms that are available, I'd like to be put on the list. You guys have my phone number. You can call me, and I'll drive, so many miles away that if someone has it that they have a swarm that they find, they can give me a call and I'll come and pick them up.
So does that require any training? Do you have to know what you do? Because I see, or you told me about going to somebody's wall.
Well, that's a bee cutout. As far as
Oh, cut
swarms,
out. Okay.
the main things, like let's say you have a branch and you have your bees hanging from it. The
Mm,
main thing that you'll do is, if you can, I like to go and I like to cut off the branch, and then I'll take the whole branch and set it in the box and set it in there, and I'll take it with me. Or
okay.
if you can't, like say it's on someone's pole or mailbox or something, you can you can literally take it and you can just like scoop the bees in there with your gloves and get them in there. And if you even if you can't see the queen, you put a bunch of bees in there, and usually the queen's most of the time like in the center of that cluster. You shake them all in there and get a lid on it and have it right at the same height. Bees will fly around, different stuff, but then you'll start to all of a sudden see bees marching in to the box. And that's
Uh,
because they smell the queen, the pheromones and stuff like that. So they'll just do 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 do, and they'll start marching in it. It's a very swarm catching is one of the things that it's very nervous when you do it, but it's one of the easiest ways to catch bees. I
so
mean, I've done it barehanded just because they're not worried about stinging you. I mean, I've done it. I didn't have gloves on me and I had just a box. I usually ride around with one in my truck just in case I get a call. If I forget my gloves, I'll just, hey, go get it, boop, and just put it in there and do it with my hands.
yeah, nah. So for us who don't know what a swarm trap is, what does it consist of? What is it?
So a swarm trap is basically, I mean, some people do like the full 10 frame box and stuff, but for me, a swarm trap, I like to do like the same way I get a 5 frame nuke. I like to set up a swarm trap just like that, because you will have bees, even if they're bigger than it, you'll have bees that'll move in and then they may be bearding on the front of it. If they're just so big, they may be hanging down. But I like to just set up usually like 5 frames, because then that way your comb's not getting damaged or anything, but it has it kind of just in that area.
So you would you put it up high? You just put it somewhere in the yard, or how does that work?
I I usually like to put mine, like I'll take a ladder. I usually put mine about 8 to 10 feet off the ground, just
Mm,
because when bees are flying, they're flying higher
well,
with it.
okay.
So I set up higher, especially so no animals can get it. Like if you have a swarm move in there, I don't want by
Mhm.
chance a bear being too low to get it, or someone messing with it. So I like to just put it up a little bit higher up.
Mm. So I noticed like when beekeepers talk, they use a natural jargon, which sounds like another language to us. So you talk about a nuke and uh, whatever you call the baby bees and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
right.
Because hey, it sounds like if you say a bee box or some baby bees, it sounds. I can understand that, but I know it's some different terminology for it. And so when you say a swarm trap, it sounds like something different and fancy when it's just another bee box, right? That's not being
Mhm.
used at the time.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's basically it's a bee box that, like for me, I have several swarm traps, but what I'll do is I'll go and place them in the tree, and then let's say I catch a swarm, I'll take it down or bring another hive over there, move the bees into it,
Mm,
put empty frames right back inside of it. Like it's a swarm trap to me is one I'll just leave there for most of the year, just to keep it, just in case you have some bees that want to move in there.
okay. Okay. Hmm. See, that's every time I talk to you, man, it's like overload, and I'm gonna sit there and go crazy for a while thinking about all the stuff that I just heard. So, guys, I did this, for both, you and I drove him crazy with questions, I'm sure,
You didn't
and
drive me crazy.
I know it's a lot of information because I'm a novice or I'm new to it, and I had no clue, and I'm very interested in it. I'm a grower, just like most of you all are. And, I have things that actually need to be cross pollinated to actually produce fruit. And generally, me and Sherry are the bees, because we want to make sure we get our fruit. But if we got hives around, we don't really have to worry about that. So, it's been times we went on vacation and almost didn't want to go because we saw some flowers about to open and we need to go ahead and pollinate them. So, I think this will be great. And, the fact that, we get some nice honey,
Mhm.
on top of that, so I love the idea of it. A lot of people think, like I did, that, you have to worry about being stung. You know, I haven't been stung and I'm around them all the time. My greenhouse is literally right beside them and I walk past them all the time. I put up a privacy fence right behind them. They didn't sting me. I'm surprised. I was expecting that because I was using a nail gun and I was like, bah, bah, bah. Sure, like I'm gonna go on the other side of the fence over here. So I was just kind of like looking at them while I was, bah. But I came out unscathed, so I'm happy with that. And I'm excited about this journey. I definitely want to appreciate you, for pushing me along because they don't tell her how much longer I ought to waste it, trying to get started. Oh, let me
Right.
make sure. So guys, if you just came in, this is Jay from the Beehive. He does have a channel. Great guy. His family is great. They're good people. You know, he loves what he's doing and he loves talking about them. So, if you have questions, concerns, you want to get started in bees, I mean, he can either tell you where to go or he can supply you with them. Some great honey from around the area. They have all different kinds. It was delicious. Can't wait to get me some. But Jay, you have anything else that you can add to what we talked?
um, no, so really, it's how do I put it? It's a lot of information that someone can get from the beginning. It's kind of like you said, it's kind of like an overload. But there's many different things that still we could have talked about and could go on learning and stuff like that. But I think the main thing from all this is you getting this information, and I think some of the biggest thing that you have to remember is you got to take that first step. It may seem hard or may seem overwhelming, but it's one of those things that once you get into it and once you start, you can literally grow and learn at your own pace. If you're a go-getter and you want to jump into it as fast as possible, well, you
Hmm.
can do that. You can grow. I mean, there's many people out there, many sources that you can find to have it. Um, to me, it's a need. I think we need more beekeepers in the world. I think it's great to show our kids just how we do it. It's something that it's so simple or something so small, like I guess small and simple, but it plays such an important role in like growers and farmers and just learning like with agriculture that we need. And I think that a lot of times that people, I guess, don't realize just how essential it can be. But it's just with everything, I think the saying says that they didn't build Rome in a day. So it's just you learn so much information and you can take that and just grow and nurture with that and spending the time, like we are now, spending the time with everyone, getting these questions answered and growing the community just as far as like beekeepers and learning. And I think with that, this is just a good start. I think it helps to produce like that little flame in everyone that wants to get going and get started with it. And then once it happens, it just takes off from there. It just
Hmm.
develops into that burning fire to keep going.
Yeah, yeah, I feel it. So, Audrey living life was talking about an old tree trunk. I'm not sure if she's asking about getting bees out of there or putting.
I would assume it from just the question. I'm assuming she means getting the bees out of the tree trunk.
Okay.
Um, there's there's different ways you can do that. Of course, whether it comes with cutting the tree or getting it removed from there, or you have like I guess it would be like doing a I'm trying to think of the word because I don't usually do it. You have like your cutouts that you do, or a trap out. That's it. The trap out, you can trap the bees out of it. But usually, if I'm going to get them out of a tree and stuff like that, usually I'm going to open the tree out and try to get it. That's the way I see with some of that. Oh, did we freeze up? Oh, are we still there? Oh no, he froze on me, guys. I don't know where he went. But that's as far as me. I usually try to cut open a tree or to get them in there, and usually you don't want it because I feel like yes, they are natural with it, but they're not. They're not. I guess I feel like it's not their best chance of survival as far as like for mites and all that stuff like that. I know that Bobby will come right back. Sarah, I'll message you. Yeah, that's fine with that. She said, "I'm trying to save the bees. Friends want to seal them in." No, I think Audrey's living life. I think if you could, whether they want to either remove them or if they would allow you to cut some of that tree, I would try to get them out. I think that's a very, I guess, inhumane way to do it, but it traps them in there. And I think that's something that people do by trapping bees inside of a hive. I think that just, I mean, it's horrible. It's like if you trap animals in to get them killed, but you trap bees inside of a tree and they can't get out. I think that's horrible.
Were you live the whole time?
Yeah. I was
Okay.
talking. We froze, and I was like, I don't know
Okay.
if it stopped, and they were like, well, he'll be back. He'll be back. So
So do you have a chat up? Because okay, I guess they coming back in.
yeah, well, I saw it on the other side of YouTube. Got the YouTube showed up on the side. I can see like the chats. I just muted the audio, but I see some of the chats, and I was like, oh no, he went away.
Yeah, you froze up. I was like, but it was actually my side. There was a question that I can't remember what it was. Oh, somebody asked, do you spray your the hive? I guess your swarm hive with something. I don't remember.
Oh yeah, with like the pheromones. I
Okay.
usually like I said, there's something called Swarm Commander. They make these like little sticks that you can put in there, and it
No.
keeps like the pheromones in there.
Mhm.
But I like to actually like even with that, you get like some of like the lemongrass oil and stuff like that. You can like spray some on your comb and different stuff like
Oh,
that. Because usually I like to check swarm traps, if not every week, like every couple weeks, and that's simple as just going by there. Hey, looking. Hey, is it is it there? Is it there? But that the lemongrass oil is very good as far as, to me, it's a natural. And I said you can put that stuff in there and a couple of drops. And we all know how strong some of those essential oils are and can
mhm,
be. So
mhm.
you put that in there and it'll draw them in there really well.
So it
For
should.
with
I
it.
shouldn't put the grass in there. The
What's that?
lemongrass. I shouldn't put the actual lemongrass in there.
I mean, I wouldn't fully load it down, but it wouldn't hurt. I mean, even to keep some of the scent, you could probably put a couple little pieces in there.
Okay. Yeah, I got plenty of that growing around here, so I definitely will use that.
So you can use
Uh,
it. You can make some organic, basically swarm commander for you because you take those leaves or
mm.
take the lemongrass and you like get the oil off of it, make like a
Well, my
tincture.
wife, she does make oil with that stuff. So,
Sherry,
but
get you hooked up with that.
I'm a, so I would just take that and spray a little bit on the cones and inside the swarm eye. And
Yeah,
how often would
usually
you do that?
um it depends on how long. Like if it's usually the scent. Like that's why I say I like to check mine like every 2 weeks. I mean, when you're priming swarm season, you can check it every week. You just want to make sure like that aroma is there. It doesn't have to be like overbearing, but as long as it has like that smell of it, because the bees will be able to track that and smell it because they'll go and a couple of bees will start observing it, like, hey, does this look like a good viable home? I think we could
Mhm.
go and stay at, and then they'll disappear, and then shoot, all of a sudden you could have like a giant swarm that moves in there in the next couple days.
So are you would that promote your bees to swarm if they got a hive with that smell in it?
I'm talking about if you put it in like a main hive.
No, if you
It
put it
won't. You
inside
talking about
like a swarm.
no, it won't. Having that out there, like if you're talking about your hive, if you are doing your hive checks and you're checking that, um, and no swarm cells, different stuff like that, it won't draw a hive out to try to do it. I mean, you have something that's called absconding, which is something where bees just naturally leave, but there's a cause that they leave. But if,
Mhm.
if you have a swarm trap that's set up, let's say a good bit of ways away from your hive, usually if your hive's not going to swarm, it's not going to try to draw them out to leave your hive to go to that tree.
Okay. I think that's about now. We haven't talked about protective clothing. What would be the best thing for a new person to get if they need to get some protective clothing to work their hives?
Um, so if they're, let's say if they're real hesitant on, I guess not knowing what they want or like their protection, like or I guess scared level, you would say. I would recommend getting like a full body suit
Mm.
that they could wear until they get comfortable. But you can get a full like bodysuit, or you can get a bee jacket, which the bee jacket just goes like obviously in your arms and goes to your waist, and you can put that on there. Um, I would then recommend getting gloves. You can either get like some leather gloves or different stuff like that. I have some of them here. This is the case with it. I mean, this is like your some of your standard gloves that will protect more of your arms and your hands. Um, that way you just keep it. Those are the two main protectors, is just having like your bee suit with the veil and your gloves.
So I'm assuming that based off of your location and your temperatures, on I guess what style to get, because mine is real like porous, like
Yes, yeah,
so.
you have a ventilated one. Yeah, so for me personally, even down here, I like to use a ventilated suit, because if you have numerous hives that you got to go into, and let's say it's 90 to 100 degrees with with your humidity and stuff wherever you're at, it can get very hot very fast in a solid suit. So I mean, I would recommend, there's a lot of companies out there right now that they're making more ventilated suits, and they're not too expensive as far as that, but I would recommend getting a ventilated suit, because then it keeps you breathable, and then it's usually it's 3 layers of protection that protects the bee stingers to be able to go through.
So you know what? I mean, guys, if y'all have any questions, go ahead and ask them quick. But I noticed, and it may be because I was younger and I was outside more, that bees used to be everywhere. You know,
Hmm.
you play in the field in the summer, there were bees all over the ground, like on the flowers, little white flowers, and I don't see that no more. Not like well, I don't see it no more at all. So,
Right.
is there an issue with that, or is it just something I'm not paying attention to?
Well, even when I was a kid, you used to see them all in the clover and stuff like that. You'd see them
Yeah.
everywhere. Um, I mean, for a little bit of time, I guess, even in the early 2000s, stuff like that. I mean, there has been a lot of like issues like with colony collapse disorder, and before it was a lot like iffy and stuff with like the varroa mites. Like as the pests are coming up, it's taking people to do like good research to be able to find good like viable means to take care of them. Like for the varroa mite, there's a lot of stuff that's out there now, but in the past there wasn't. There was stuff that people were using that were literally causing them to build an immunity to it. Like you could treat the mites one year and they die, but then you treat them with the same stuff next year and they build an immunity to it. So it was
Mm.
causing a rapid decline in the bees. I also think with a lot of like urbanization, like urbanizing a lot of things, like people, doing a lot of like cutting down of trees and different stuff like that. There's a lot of different stuff that has probably been the reason why, like just the cut down of it. Because you got to think, if you don't have a beekeeper around, 9 times out of 10, where do bees go to. They go into hollow trees.
Right.
So a lot of like the clear cutting, a lot of stuff that I think has gone down. I guess like in a sense modernization that people try, but then also like crops. You get a lot of crops that people start spreading, fertilizers and stuff that are not only potent to us but potent to the animals in the environment, and they're trying to just get a bigger yield. And I think that's been a huge decline.
Yeah,
But
that's one
plus,
of the. Go ahead.
I would say plus with it, like when I was talking to you, I think they say the average age of a beekeeper in the United States is 58. So
Wow.
you have it's kind of been like in a sense a dying art. You have a lot
Dang.
of like a lot of people would say, oh man, my grandpa used to keep bees for 15, 20 years. But then I was like, well, why didn't you want to get started? They're like, oh, I didn't have an interest to keep bees. I don't want to get stung. I saw the work he
Mhm.
had to put into it. So it just kind of, I think, fell off from certain generations. A lot of people moved to getting jobs, outside of, beekeeping.
Mhm.
And it just kind of changed. It just kind of fell off with it.
Yeah, so the North Carolina gardener, she says she don't see bees like that either. So that's got to be making a major impact on everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we talk about growing your own. You don't have to worry so much about all the stuff that they're using today. That somebody that paid a lot of money to get past, and you don't know what it's doing to your body. If it's killing off the insects, it's got to be harming you in some form or fashion.
Agreed.
And it may take you lot longer time to suffer for whatever is going that they're putting down, but it's actually hurting you. So we know people are suffering from a lot of things a lot more often, and you got to ask yourself why. But I think if we actually do exactly what y'all are doing, and keep bees, and you know, and plus grow food,
Mm-hmm.
grow our own food where we don't have to depend so much, so they don't have to try to produce so much.
Right.
It probably make everything better.
I
So,
agree with you.
guys, hey, we done been on here for an hour 2 minutes, and I know the wife and the kids probably like, but we definitely appreciate you coming on, man, and we appreciate everybody who came in. This Jared
Yes,
from the
definitely.
Beehive. Y'all check him out, man. Good guy, knowledgeable guy, willing to help you out. So
Definitely. And I mean, anytime, just like with you guys, I mean, anytime that we have our email, anything that we have Facebook, all that stuff. You guys, anytime you have any questions or want to, reach out, I'll do everything in my power and my means to be able to, guide you in the right way. Or if I don't know an answer to a certain question you're asking, I'll talk with the people that I even know and
right.
try to get to answer your question to be able to help you.
So come on, guys. Hey, this the man. Y'all need to get it. Anything you want to add before we take off?
No, I appreciate you, and I love the questions, man. It's awesome. I like seeing the passion that you have and just the excitement that you have with it. It kind of just someone like me that's been doing it for years and seeing newer people wanting to get into it and be able to have such a passion for it already. I love seeing that, and I appreciate you stepping out your comfort zone and wanting to become a beekeeper.
Hey, I'm excited, and I think a lot more people will be if they actually knew how to get started and what to do to get started. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted to do this chat, and I knew you would be the perfect person to do it because I already picked your brain, and I know that you you love answering these questions.
I do.
But all right, guys, I appreciate y'all coming in, man. Hey, Jared, I'll holler at you, bro.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, man.
Y'all take care. Thank you.
All right, guys. So as soon as I figure out how to get off of this thing, we're gonna get out of here. But I definitely appreciate everybody coming in. You know, we're a community, and we need to share all the information that we all have, to help each other. And that is the purpose. We trying to motivate you all to to do all that you can to make your situation better, and in turn, y'all doing the same thing for us. So We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Guys, until the next time, peace.